I was sitting on my bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, staring at my phone screen, and I felt like the biggest idiot on the planet. The glow from my banking app illuminated my face in the dark, and there it was, $2,317. 2 years of sacrifice. 2 years of saying no to drinks with friends, skipping vacations, meal prepping every single Sunday until I wanted to scream. And you know what my account had earned me that month? 53 cents. 53 cents. Let me paint you a picture of what those 2 years looked like. I cut out my morning coffee runs, saving, what, $4 a day? That's $120 a month I was putting away instead. I stopped going out to eat, started buying generic brands at the grocery store, wore the same 3 outfits on rotation because I refused to buy new clothes. I was doing everything right, everything the financial gurus told me to do. Save your money, they said. Compound interest is magic, they said. Your future self will thank you, they said. But here's what nobody tells you. When you're staring at 53 cents in interest earnings, compound interest doesn't feel like magic. It feels like a cruel joke. It feels like you're being punished for being responsible. And that night, sitting on that cold tile floor, I did the math in my head. At this rate, with my savings account earning basically nothing, I would need to save for 47 more years to have what I needed for retirement. 47 years. I was 28 years old, and I felt like I was already too late. You know that feeling when you've been told your whole life that if you just work hard and save money, everything will work out? That feeling when you realize you've been lied to? That's where I was. I wasn't drowning in debt. I wasn't making terrible financial decisions. I was doing everything right, and I was still losing. The math just didn't add up. My rent kept going up, groceries kept getting more expensive, and my savings account balance grew so slowly it felt like watching paint dry in slow motion. I started calculating how much I needed to save each month to hit my goals, and the numbers made me physically sick. To retire comfortably at 65, I would need to save almost $2,000 every single month. Every month. And I was barely managing to save $400. The gap between where I was and where I needed to be felt impossible to close. I felt like I was running on a treadmill that kept speeding up while I was already at my maximum pace. That night, I almost gave up entirely. I had my finger hovering over the transfer button, ready to move that money into my checking account and book a flight somewhere. Anywhere. What was the point of sacrificing if the reward was invisible? What was the point of being responsible if I was going to be broke forever anyway? Sound familiar? If you're sitting there right now, feeling like saving money is pointless because you never see any real progress, I need you to keep listening. Because what I discovered after that bathroom floor moment changed everything. And I wish someone had told me about it years earlier. Here's the thing about following all the right advice. It doesn't prepare you for how lonely it feels. I was 26 when I started getting serious about money, and I thought I was doing everything perfectly. I read every personal finance book I could find, listened to podcasts during my commute, set up automatic transfers to my savings account. I was that person who actually tracked every single expense in a spreadsheet. I knew exactly how much I spent on toilet paper each month, and I was proud of that level of control. But while I was busy being responsible, life around me kept moving forward without me. My best friend bought a condo, and I showed up to her housewarming party with a $20 bottle of wine, pretending I wasn't dying inside. My coworker took a 2-week trip to Japan and came back with hundreds of photos, while I hadn't left the state in 3 years. My younger sister got engaged and started planning a destination wedding, and I had to have the awkward conversation about whether I could even afford to go. Every single month, I felt like I was falling further behind, while technically doing everything right. You know what nobody talks about? The resentment that builds up when you're the only one sacrificing. I started declining invitations because I couldn't afford them, and eventually, people stopped inviting me. I watched my friends' Instagram stories from restaurants I couldn't afford, vacations I couldn't take, experiences I was missing out on. And the worst part? They all seemed fine financially. They weren't reading finance books or tracking their spending. They were just living their lives. Meanwhile, I was eating rice and beans for the fourth night in a row, congratulating myself for saving $12. The math was supposed to make sense. I was putting away $300, sometimes $400 a month. That should have felt like progress, right? But when I looked at my account balance, it barely moved. Month 1, $200. Month 6, $1,400. Month 12, $3,100. The numbers went up, technically, but they went up so slowly that it felt meaningless. I needed tens of thousands for a down payment, hundreds of thousands for retirement. At this pace, I was looking at decades before I could afford anything that mattered. I started doing dangerous mental math. If I just stopped saving for 1 year and used that money to actually live, would it really matter in the long run? The difference between having $4,000 and $8,000 didn't seem significant when I needed $200,000. It's like being told to walk from New York to California, and after a year of walking, you've made it to Pennsylvania. Sure, you've made progress, but the finish line is still impossibly far away. The temptation to just give up and buy a plane ticket somewhere becomes overwhelming. And here's the really messed up part. I started to believe that maybe saving was just something rich people told poor people to do to keep them in their place. Maybe the whole system was designed to make people like me feel responsible for being broke, while people who already had money got to enjoy the benefits of compound interest. Because when you're earning $2 a month in interest, compound interest isn't compounding anything. It's barely covering the inflation that's eating away at your purchasing power. I felt trapped below some invisible wall that separated people who could build wealth from people who just survived. And I had no idea how to break through it. Let me show you the math that nobody explains when they tell you to start saving. Let's say you manage to scrape together $5,000 in your savings account, which honestly takes most people years to do. If you're lucky enough to find a high-yield savings account paying 4% interest, which is generous, you're earning about $16 a month. $16. That's less than 2 trips to Starbucks, and you had to save $5,000 to get it. Now here's where it gets really brutal. To earn $100 a month in interest, which still isn't even enough to cover a phone bill, you would need to have $30,000 saved at that same 4% rate. $30,000 just to earn what you could make in 3 hours working overtime. The psychological torture of this realization almost broke me. I was trying to save my way to financial freedom, but the math showed me that I would need to already be financially free before saving would actually make a difference. I remember the exact moment I did this calculation. I was sitting at my desk during lunch break, eating my homemade sandwich that cost me $2 to make, and I pulled up a compound interest calculator online. I typed in my current balance, my monthly contribution, and the interest rate. The calculator showed me that at my current pace, I would have $10,000 saved in about 4 years. 4 years to reach $10,000, which would earn me $33 a month in interest. I literally felt my chest tighten. 4 years of sacrifice for $33. But wait, it gets worse. Because during those 4 years, I wasn't just saving money in a vacuum. Life was happening around me. My rent went up twice. My car needed new tires. I got sick and had to pay for urgent care. Every single time I managed to save a little extra, something came up and knocked me back down. It felt like I was trying to fill a bathtub with a teaspoon while someone had the drain halfway open. The water level would rise so slowly that by the time I made any real progress, something would pull the plug completely. The cruel irony is that the people who tell you that saving is easy are the people who already have money saved. When you have $50,000 in the bank, saving another $5,000 is just 10% more. The interest you earn actually covers real expenses. Your money is working for you in a tangible way. But when you have $2,000 saved, adding another $500 feels like it's taking forever. And the 17 cents you earned in interest that month is basically invisible. The psychological warfare of delayed gratification with absolutely no visible reward is something nobody prepares you for. I almost quit so many times during this phase. I would look at my account balance and think about all the experiences I was missing, all the memories I wasn't making, all the life I was putting on hold. And for what? So I could watch my balance crawl up at a pace that felt meaningless? There were nights I laid awake at 3 a.m. doing mental math, calculating how long it would take to reach different milestones. Every calculation felt worse than the last. 20 years to reach 100,000. 35 years to reach 500,000. The numbers were so overwhelming that giving up seemed rational, almost logical. Why torture myself for decades when the payoff was so far away I might not even live to see it? It happened on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always my longest days at work, and I was already exhausted before everything fell apart. I was driving home when I heard it, that grinding metal sound that every car owner dreads. My heart sank before my brain even processed what was happening. I pulled over, called a tow truck, and waited on the side of the highway for 45 minutes while rush hour traffic screamed past me. When the mechanic finally called with the estimate, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $1,800. $1,800 to fix a transmission issue that apparently couldn't wait. I sat in the waiting room of that repair shop, staring at my phone, looking at my savings account balance. $3,900. 2.5 years of sacrifice sitting right there, and I needed to take almost half of it, just like that, because my car decided to break down at the worst possible moment. The rational part of my brain knew this was exactly why emergency funds existed. This was literally what I had been saving for. But the emotional part of my brain was screaming that this proved everything I'd been thinking. Saving was pointless because life would always find a way to take it back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept running the numbers in my head, and every calculation made me feel worse. After paying for the car repair, I would be back down to around $2,000. Back to where I was 8 months ago. 8 months of saying no to everything, eating cheap food, skipping events with friends, all erased in one afternoon because of a mechanical failure I couldn't predict or prevent. The unfairness of it made me physically angry. I was doing everything right, and I was still getting punished for trying. But here's where it gets really dark. I started thinking about what else I could do with that money. If I was going to be broke anyway, why not at least have something to show for it? I started browsing flights to Europe, something I'd been dreaming about for years. Round-trip tickets to Barcelona were $900. I could go for a week, have actual experiences, make actual memories, instead of just watching numbers in an account that would apparently never grow. At least I would have photos and stories instead of a balance that kept getting knocked back to zero. I had my banking app open, my finger hovering over the transfer button. I was going to do it. I was going to take that money and book the flight and stop pretending that being responsible was getting me anywhere. The shame I felt in that moment was overwhelming. Not because I wanted to spend the money, but because I felt like a complete failure. I couldn't even make it 3 years without wanting to give up. What kind of person was I if I couldn't delay gratification for my own future? The voice in my head kept saying I was weak. undisciplined, exactly the kind of person who deserved to be broke forever. I didn't book the flight that night. I closed the app and put my phone face down on the nightstand and cried until I fell asleep. But I came dangerously close. And the scariest part wasn't that I almost spent the money. The scariest part was how rational it felt in that moment. How logical it seemed to just give up on saving because clearly the universe had other plans for my money. If you've ever been there, if you've ever felt like your financial progress was being mocked by circumstances beyond your control, I need you to understand that what happened next changed everything for me. The breakthrough came from the most unexpected place. I was scrolling through my phone at 2 a.m, unable to sleep after the car incident, when I stumbled across a random financial forum. Someone had posted a comment that stopped me cold. Everything changes at $25,000. That's it. No explanation, no context, just that single sentence. I sat up in bed and started searching obsessively, trying to find out what this person meant. And what I discovered in the next hour completely changed how I understood money. Let me walk you through the math that nobody shows you, because this is the part that's going to blow your mind. Let's say you have $25,000 in a high-yield savings account earning 4% annual interest. That's $1,000 per year in interest. $1,000. But here's what makes it click. That's $83 per month. Every single month, without you doing anything, your account grows by $83. That's real money. That's a tank of gas. That's groceries for a week. That's something you can actually see and feel. But it gets even better. And this is where compound interest stops being theoretical and becomes visceral. Let's say you're still saving $500 a month on top of that $25,000 base. In month 1, you add $500, and your account earns $83 in interest. So you're not just growing by $500, you're growing by $583. Month 2, your balance is now $26,083, so the interest is slightly higher, maybe $87. Your account grows by $587. Every single month, the interest payment gets bigger, and you can watch it happen. Here's where I had my complete mental breakdown in the best way possible. I opened a compound interest calculator and typed in $25,000 as my starting balance, $500 monthly contribution, 4% interest. After 1 year, the account would be at $32,000. But here's the insane part. $1,060 of that growth came from interest alone. Over 1 year, I would have contributed $6,000, but the account grew by $7,000. The extra $1,000 came from the money making money. I wasn't just saving anymore, I was earning. And then I did the calculation that made me literally gasp out loud. At $32,000, the monthly interest jumps to $107. At $40,000, it's $133 per month. At $50,000, it's $167. The snowball effect that everyone talks about suddenly became real to me. It wasn't some abstract concept for millionaires, it was an actual mathematical threshold that regular people could reach. $25,000 was the line where compound interest stopped being invisible and started being something you could track month to month. This is what nobody tells you when they say, start saving. They don't tell you that the first $10,000 is pure torture because you're earning almost nothing. They don't tell you that 10 to 25 is still brutally slow. But they also don't tell you that everything shifts at $25,000. That's the threshold where money genuinely starts making money in a way that feels real. That's where the psychological game changes because you can actually see your progress accelerating instead of crawling. And that night, sitting in my bed with my phone lighting up my face, I finally understood why people who have money find it easier to make more money. They're already past the threshold. It took me 3 years and 4 months to cross $25,000. 3 years and 4 months of the most brutal financial discipline I've ever experienced. But I need you to understand something. Knowing about the threshold changed everything about how I approached those final months. Instead of feeling like I was saving into a black hole, I was racing toward a finish line. I could see the goal. I knew exactly what was waiting for me on the other side. And that psychological shift made all the difference. The day I hit $25,112, I took a screenshot. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I needed proof that I'd made it. I had crossed the invisible wall that had felt impossible for so long. And then I waited. The next month, I logged into my account and saw it. $84 in interest. 84 actual dollars that I didn't have to work for, didn't have to sacrifice for, didn't have to stress about. It appeared in my account like magic. And for the first time in years, I felt like the system was finally working for me instead of against me. Here's what nobody prepares you for: how addictive it becomes once you cross that threshold. The next month, I watched my interest payment carefully. $87, then $91, then $95. Every single month, I could see my money working harder for me. I started doing calculations obsessively, figuring out how long it would take to reach $30,000, then $40,000, then $50,000. The math that used to depress me now excited me because I could finally see the acceleration happening in real time. The compound interest that everyone talked about wasn't theoretical anymore. It was showing up in my account every 30 days. The strategies that got me there weren't sexy or revolutionary, and I wish I could tell you I discovered some secret hack. But the truth is much simpler and much harder. I automated everything. Every paycheck, $450, went straight to savings before I could touch it. I picked up freelance work twice a month and funneled every penny into that account. When I got my tax refund, it went to savings. When I received birthday money, it went to savings. I treated that $25,000 goal like it was the most important thing in my life, because it was. But here's what I did differently after learning about the threshold. I stopped beating myself up for the pace. Before, I felt like a failure because saving was so slow. After understanding the math, I realized that slow is normal below $25,000. It's supposed to feel brutal. That's not a personal failing. That's just how compound interest works at that level. The torture phase is real, and it's unavoidable, but it's also temporary. That reframing saved my mental health and kept me from giving up during the hardest months. Today, I have $68,000 saved. The interest I earn each month is now $227. That's more than my electric bill. That's a week of groceries. That's real money that covers real expenses without me lifting a finger. And the wildest part? It keeps accelerating. Every month, the interest payment gets bigger. Every month, I'm closer to the point where the interest alone covers significant portions of my budget. The finish line I'm racing toward now isn't retirement. It's the point where my money is earning enough to cover my entire rent payment without me working for it. If you're sitting there right now with $3,000 saved, feeling like giving up, I need you to hear this. The torture doesn't last forever. $25,000 is the line where everything changes. Get there however you can, and I promise you, the math starts working in your favor. I wish someone had told me this years ago, so I'm telling you now.